promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Burkinabe Prime Minister Wadr hails community support in the fight against terrorism with over 170 billion CFA francs in voluntary contributions.
The
efforts of the Burkinabe government and people have enabled to continue the acquisition of combat, surveillance, protection, security and transportation equipment for our defense and security forces.
Togo expresses intention to join the AES Confederation to strengthen economic and security cooperation.
In as much as the decision of Togo to join the alliance of Sahelian states may sound quite unfortunate to the ECOWAS bloc and the sub-region in general, we must also put on record that the foremost primary decision in international relations is about survival.
FDR, an opposition political group in Senegal, denounces the weaponization of the justice system by the current regime, and Nigerian troops neutralize activities of some kidnappers in the north-central state of Plateau. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners within and beyond the sub-region. Newslink begins in Burkina Faso, where the Prime Minister Friday afternoon appeared before the Transitional Parliament. Jean-Emmanuel Drago's visit, first announced midweek, was to enable him to deliver his State of the Nation address. While touching on other sectors of the Burkinabe society, the fight against insecurity was at the heart of Ouedraogo's speech. The head of the transitional government stated that more than 70% of the territory has now been reclaimed.
Les efforts du gouvernement et du peuple burkinabé ont permis de poursuivre l'acquisition d'équipements de combat.
The efforts of the Burkinabe government and people have enabled to continue the acquisition of combat, surveillance, protection, security and transportation equipment for our defense and security forces. This was made possible thanks to the unwavering commitment of the Burkinabe people, who contributed more than 175 billion CFA francs to the Patriotic Support Fund in 2024, with a recovery of 99 billion in 2023, a growth rate of 76%. This demonstrates the Burkinabe people's commitment to financing the fight against terrorism with indigenous and sovereign resources. These efforts have enabled our fighting forces to increase their firepower against the enemy and to recover more than 71% of the territory to date, enabling the re-establishment of several public services, the reopening of 15 administrative district headquarters, and the resettlement of 212 villages. The momentum continues and other areas are being consolidated before the resettlement.
Poursuit et d'autres zones sont en cours de consolidation avant les réinstallations.
Burkinabe Prime Minister Jean-Emmanuel Drago speaking there. In Benin, President Patrice Talon breaks his silence on the cases of Olivier Boko and Oswald Homiki. The businessman and the former sports minister, both close to Patrice Talon, were sentenced in January this year to 20 years in prison for conspiracy against state authority. In an interview with Jeune Afrique, the Beninese president expressed his feelings of betrayal. Talon also addressed the cases of opposition political figures Joel Ivo and Rekia Madugu, who are both serving prison sentences. Details in this report by our Cotonou correspondent Aziz Adam Sule and voiced by Imoredat.
President of Benin, there is absolutely no possibility of pardoning opponents who are currently imprisoned. During an interview with Jeune Afrique, President Patrice Talon firmly dismisses the allegation of political imprisonment and mentions there are political actors who have been convicted and are currently serving a prison sentence, which is not the same thing, in quote. The discussion around his succession also gained attention when one of his close associates, Olivier Boko, was apprehended alongside former sports minister Oswald Homiki for allegedly trying to stage a coup. The two were convicted last January and are currently serving sentences of 20 years for attempting to undermine the power of the state. Reflecting on his greatest regret, Patrice Talon remarked, "Having lost my best friend, whom he says has turned into a monster." With these words, the Beninese president was adamant on the matter of Joel Aivo and Rakia Madugu. The United Nations Human Rights Council, in a briefing dated 15th August 2024, called for the immediate release of Joel Aivo, a candidate in the 2021 presidential elections, now serving a 10-year jail term. The council regards his detention as arbitrary. A comparable memo was issued in favor of the former Minister of Justice, Rakia Madugu. Nonetheless, the government and judicial authorities of Benin seem to be indifferent to this issue.
A report filed in by WADR's Cotonou correspondent Aziz Souley and voiced in our studios by Imoradet. Togo's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Professor Robert Tusse, has reiterated the country's desire to join the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. Togo's decision to join the AES Confederation is rooted in a desire to bolster regional cooperation, assert sovereignty, and provide vital economic opportunities. In a social media post detailing the rationale behind this approach, the Foreign Affairs Minister emphasized that Togo's accession to the AES is a well-considered decision aimed at ensuring the collective development and security of the region. Christopher Tichu tells us more.
In a significant shift in West African geopolitics, Togo has reiterated its intention to join the Alliance of Sahel State AES, a regional bloc currently composed of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger. The announcement made by Togo's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Professor Robert Tusse, in a Facebook post indicates an evolving relationship between ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, and the Sahel countries. This move signals not only a change in Togo's regional alignment, but also underlines Lomé's desire to assert more control over its economic and security features. Key motivation revolves around access to the sea. While the Sahelian countries of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are landlocked, Togo's deep water port of Lomé provides a critical maritime gateway that could benefit its neighbors. According to the minister, the second motivating factor is political unity. He believes that by joining AES, Togo hopes to consolidate a united front with its Sahelian partners, particularly in addressing the region's present security and economic challenges. This alignment stands in contrast to the political divide between ECOWAS and the Sahel states in recent years, as the latter increasingly seeks to distance itself from what they perceive as external control or influence from the West. Finally, Minister Tusse underscored Togo's desire to move beyond colonial legacies and prioritize African-led solutions. This aligns with the broader goal of asserting African sovereignty, allowing Togo to reduce dependency on foreign powers and bolster internal capacity.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Remember, we're live on WADR.org and on YouTube at WADR. Let's bring you this report now from the West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network, WADEMOS, which says the sub-region is struggling to make democratic progress due to the presence of military-led governments, insecurity, geopolitical pressures, and bad governance characterized by economic misgovernance, corruption, and youth unemployment. For more on this, let's join Sam Kulijanko.
According to Wademos, these threats threatened the very foundation of West Africa's development. Contained in a communique issued at the end of its third annual civil society regional convening, it said, and I quote, "The military takeovers, human rights violations, civic space restrictions, and disinformation, breaches of presidential term limits, and public dissatisfaction with governance in the region are eroding citizens' trust and faith in democratic institutions," end of quote. It added that as ECOWAS approaches its 50th anniversary, such matters placed the region in a situation where it is grappling with ideological shifts and tensions and an existential threat not just to its credibility, but to the fundamental goal of regional integration. The meeting was on the theme leveraging the solidarity movement in defense of democracy across West Africa. Challenges, lessons learned, and perspectives.
Sam Kulijanko reporting. To assist in achieving free, credible and transparent elections in Côte d'Ivoire, the European Union (EU) has allocated funds amounting to 7 million euros, or about 4.6 billion CFA francs, to be used for ensuring peaceful elections in October 2025. This was made public on Thursday by Francesca Di Mauro, the EU ambassador to Abidjan, during the launch of the election package termed All Committed Election. It's not Bang Bang, which seeks to change the narrative about election participation. The initiative brings together about 30 organizations, national and international, that are EU partners to implement projects within 30 months. Here in Senegal, the Front for the Defense of Democracy and the Republic, otherwise known as FDR, denounces what it calls the democratic backsliding since the duo of Bassirou Diomaye Faye and Ousmane Sonko came to power. The group, which brings together several opposition figures, including Khalifa Sall and Anta Babacar Ngom, believes that the country's justice system is under the influence of the executive. As Augustine Kole reports, they are calling for consultations.
The political opposition denounces the inappropriate use of the judicial system for political means in a negative light. The FDR claims that the restriction placed on former Minister Mansour Faye's travel outside the country is an infringement of his liberties, even in the absence of a court order. The Front for the Defense of Democracy and the Republic has equally condemned the arbitrary arrest of MP Farba Ngom, businessman Tahiru Sall, and several other government critics. Opponents asserted that the Financial Prosecutor's Office, which they consider an advancement in the prosecution of corruption, has been turned into an instrument of violence. Consequently, the FDR has called for an end to the systemic persecution of opposition members. The FDR equally calls upon the government to try and address the problem of the high cost of living and to retract the tax proposals.
Augustine Kole filed that report in Guinea. Agents deployed in the field for the administrative census for civil status purposes, or the RAVEC campaign, have expressed worry about the limited resources allocated to them. They say they have been off work for over a month. The census, launched last November by transitional government, is an essential step in the process of returning to constitutional order. The objective is to update the electoral roll. Transitional President General Mamadi Doumbouya has pledged to set a date for the constitutional referendum by the end of this month. Prime Minister Amadou Wuriba maintains that the presidential election will be held this year. And before the break, let's take you to Nigeria, where troops have neutralized 2 suspected kidnappers in Plateau State, North Central region, marking another operation against armed criminality in the country's top region. According to military sources, soldiers of the 3rd Division under Operation Safe Haven launched a raid in the Kuru and Turu communities of Jos South local government area as part of efforts to combat violent crime under Operation Lafian Jama'a. From Jos Plateau State, Usman Umar reports.
The operation reportedly targeted criminal hideouts in response to intelligence reports linking the suspects to recent abductions. In the ensuing firefight, troops captured 2 individuals identified as Aminu Shuaibu and Yusuf A. Subsequent search revealed ammunition including 18 rounds of 7.62 mm and 9 rounds of 5.56 mm cartridges. Military officials say the suspect confessed to participating in the March 9 kidnapping of a woman in Rantia, Jos South local government area. They also admitted to possessing weapons at a hideout and offered to lead troops to recover them. However, while en route, the suspects allegedly attempted to disarm a soldier and were shot dead. In addition to the arrest, the troops recovered several cows suspected to have been rustled, which have been secured pending identification of their rightful owners. The operation comes amid intensified recent military campaigns in the northwest and northeastern regions, leading to the killing of high-profile bandits and terrorist leaders. But despite ongoing military efforts, many rural areas remain vulnerable, with residents calling for stronger security measures to curb the violence. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Jos, North Central Nigeria.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Burkinabe Prime Minister Wadr hails community support in the fight against terrorism with over 170 billion CFA francs in voluntary contribution. Togo expresses its intention to join the AES Confederation to strengthen economic and security cooperation. FDR, an opposition political group in Senegal, denounces the weaponization of the justice system by the current regime. Nigerian troops neutralize activities of some kidnappers in the north-central state of Plateau. Still ahead in the news, President Mahama of Ghana sacks the nation's Inspector General of Police, names a new chief. We also have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
State-owned enterprises, SOEs in Ghana, may soon face a merger, privatization or shutdown. This decision follows a meeting between President John Mahama and chief executive officers of SOEs in Accra, where the new government outlined new measures to curb wasteful spending and generate revenue. Organized by the State Interest and Governance Authority, SIGA, with President Mahama, the engagement comes after revelation by Minister of Finance Dr. Kasa Toforson that many state-owned enterprises are struggling financially. From Accra, Etisu reports.
In all, over 100 chief executives of state-owned enterprises met with President John Mahama as he gave them the new charge, determined to crack the whip and root out all forms of corrupt practices in his administration while ensuring that he makes the economy as robust as possible. The president reminded the CEOs of what their mandates are.
My vision for reform is clear, anchored on performance, accountability, and national interest. Under my leadership, specified entities will be transformed into engines of growth, aligning with our goal of a 24-hour economy that expands job opportunities and drives industrialization.
The president then reminded them of the need to work towards urgent financial discipline and improved operational performances. He also declared that the era of mediocrity and financial mismanagement in state-owned enterprises must come to an end, consequently cautioning that loss-making SOEs will no longer be tolerated. For such entities, Mahama says they will either be merged, privatized, or closed down altogether.
Loss-making SOEs will no longer be tolerated. They will be swiftly reformed, they will be merged, privatized, or shut down. Corruption, procurement fraud, and financial mismanagement will be prosecuted strictly, and boards that rubber stamp poor decisions will be replaced. The practice also of, in a few cases, using entity resources and funds to indemnify board members from accountability must cease immediately.
The directive by the president marks a significant policy shift from previous government approaches, moving away from continuous bailouts and subsidies for struggling state enterprises. In Ghana, state-owned enterprises play a crucial role, spanning key sectors such as energy, transport, agriculture, banking, and manufacturing.
Echi Atisu filed that report. Meanwhile, a new chief of the Ghana Police Service has been named by President John Dramani Mahama. COP Christian Tete Yohuno becomes the acting Inspector General of Police after the former chief, Dr. George Akufo-Dampare, was relieved of his duties. This was conveyed in a statement on Thursday evening and signed by the Minister of Government Communication, Felix Kwakwe Ofosu, and in accordance with Articles 91 and 202 of the 1992 Constitution of Ghana, and in consultation with the Council of State. The outgoing Inspector General of Police was appointed in August 2021, while the new police chief was until now his immediate deputy. In Mali, political parties are calling for the repeal of the new taxes on telephone services that came into effect on March 5, 2025. In a joint statement, the Malian political parties Yelema and the M5 RFP Mali Kura call for the complete repeal of these taxes. For each phone top-up, the state now levies 10% of the price, and for each mobile money transfer, there is a 1% tax. The president of a third party, CODEM, also denounces this new tax and issues a quote and saying a much broader call for a revival against dictatorship, end of quote. The authorities explain that these taxes are intended to feed into a special fund and finance social projects across the country.
Politics
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Our guest this evening is a focus on this decision by Togo, which was announced by its Foreign Affairs Minister, Professor Robert Dossey, that the country intends to join the Alliance of Sahel State AES. Togo's decision to join the AES is rooted, according to the minister, in a desire to bolster regional cooperation, assert sovereignty, and provide vital economic opportunities. Our guest is Dr. Michael Nketia, an international relations expert who speaks to WADR about the possible impact of this on ECOWAS.
In as much as the decision of Togo to join the Alliance of Sahelian States may sound quite unfortunate to the ECOWAS bloc and the sub-region in general, we must also put on record that the foremost decision or primary decision in international relations is about survival. Without the survival of the state, there will be no statehood, there will be no sovereignty. So perhaps Togo is prioritizing its survival as a state over the collective decision and well-being of ECOWAS. We know that collectively it would have been better for Togo to be part of ECOWAS, which is now a 12-member states bloc, than joining the Alliance of Sahel States, which is just made up of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. However, if you are to do a detailed and critical assessment of the situation, should Togo decide to eventually join the alliance, it becomes the only country of the four-member alliance, that is if it is accepted.
How would these three blocks, the AES member countries, be seen on the faces of democratic watchers who believe that you people exited ECOWAS because you believe that ECOWAS is not upholding to the tenets of democracy and is being biased to some member countries? And Togo in this instance is one country that is not adhering to the tenets of democracy. Yet if the AES should open its doors to Togo, how would the AES member state itself be seen in the faces of democratic watchers?
We know that there's been military interventions in these countries. It started in Burkina Faso with the overthrow of Blaise Compaoré. Then it started in Mali. It got to Burkina Faso. And in Mali, we've had about 3 successive military interventions. In Burkina Faso, about 2 successive military interventions in the last 4 years. So if these countries were pushed out of ECOWAS because they were not being democratic, and there was that ultimatum for them to return their countries to civilian rule or be pushed out of ECOWAS, then it serves as a very good reason for Togo to also leave ECOWAS, because I know, it is generally accepted that Togo is basically not practicing a democracy. So why wait to be pushed out when you can live on your own? I believe this is the strategy of Togolese President Faure Gnassingbe. Why should I wait to be pushed out when I can live on my own with much more dignity?
What then becomes the fate of ECOWAS members? Does this serve as a form for retrospection to analyze themselves and see what exactly they are getting wrong, which is obviously making their members exit?
Okay, it is time for ECOWAS to reinvent itself. ECOWAS should not only be known by books or theoretically. It is time for the world to know ECOWAS as a very practicable supranational entity that is committed to fulfilling its own objectives and mandates. If ECOWAS can activate its military wing, ECOMOG, to go to the defense of member states when they are being overrun by terrorist groups or terror networks, if ECOWAS can guarantee the political sovereignty and stability of member states, that when there is an emergence of a coup d'etat, ECOWAS could easily send in their standby force to quell any form of rebellion or coup d'etat, then member states will feel committed to the tenets of ECOWAS, and they will feel protected, belonging, and then they would also feel that at any point in time, ECOWAS can easily come to their aid.
Dr. Michael Nketia is an international relations expert. Up next is sports news with Sam Kulejanko.
Hello out there, warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The Black Stars head coach Otto Addo has named a 23-man squad for the upcoming 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Chad and Madagascar. The team led by Captain Jordan Ayew includes 3 home-based players: Benjamin Asayo of Accra Oaks of Oak, Kamaradine Mahmoudou of Madiana SC, and Razak Simpson of Nations FC. Deputy captain and Arsenal midfielder Thomas Partey returns to the squad after missing 4 of the Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers last year. The team will assemble on Monday, March 17, 2025 and train for 4 days before hosting Chad at the Accra Sports Stadium on Friday, March 21, 2025. Black Stars will then travel to Morocco to face Madagascar in another Group I match on Monday, March 24, 2025, according to Ghana Football Association official website. Ghana are currently second in Group I with 9 points from 4 matches after securing 3 wins and 1 defeat, leaving them with Comoros. And Guinea-Bissau named 4 new players in their squad for this month's FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Sierra Leone and Burkina Faso as coach Luis Boamote selected 25 players for the Group A clashes. That is the first call-up for 25-year-old left-back Babacar Fati, who was previously on the books of Portuguese champions Sporting Lisbon, as well as 21-year-old Mario Junior, a centre-back from Oliviense in Portugal's second division. Midfielder Vendo Felix, 22, has made his debut in the Portuguese top flight with Victoria Guimarães this season and comes into the national squad along with 24-year-old striker Tambul Monteiro from Prominense in Portugal. Guinea-Bissau will face Sierra Leone on March 20th at Samuel Kayondo Stadium in Monrovia, Liberia, and then return home to host Burkina Faso on March 24, 2025. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Maojo Juve, Mam Kodu Njai Fai, and Sheikh Njai for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Remember, also stream live on WADR.org. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our security and governance program in English in the Sahel. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.